Joe Jaworski, Democratic candidate for Texas Attorney General. Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, this is the final sprint to the May 24th runoff, and early voting starts on Monday. So what is your message to primary voters in this last sprint to the election?
Well, thank you, Jack. My message to voters: welcome to the runoff. Listen carefully. That sound you hear are November voters. And they are saying to Democratic May runoff voters, please nominate someone who can beat Ken Paxton. And my message to them, Jack, is experience matters in this question. So Democrats should get behind Joe Jaworski, a 60-year-old attorney who has been practicing for 31 years straight. That's a lot of experience in court. A former mayor of Galveston and city councilman before that, who knows that local government is the best government, and whose family legacy is no man is above the law. Yeah, my grandfather, Leon Jaworski, was talking about Richard Nixon when he said that, but I think the mantra applies equally to Ken Paxton.
So why do you think you are the better candidate to go up against Ken Paxton if he is the Republican nominee than your opponent, Rochelle Garza?
Well, because this is really good news. Democrats can't fix the problem alone. Jack, if we look at the March 1st primary, there were 1 million and change who voted in the Democratic primary. There were 1.9 million and change who voted in the GOP primary. Now that adds up to between 2.9 and 3 million. Yet there will be 9.5 million who vote in November, extrapolating from past experience. Well, who are these extra 6.5 million voters? I'll tell you who they are. They're the voters in Texas who will decide who your next Texas Attorney General is. So I would say to you that moderates, independents, lean Democrat, lean Republican, by definition, people who don't vote in a primary are waiting for the Democratic Party to nominate someone they can get behind. And for all the reasons I've expressed, experience, ethics, integrity, and a reputation in the state for being an honest attorney and former local government official, that's the sort of candidate that people can get behind, whatever their party denomination is.
What's your reaction to the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation poll from last month that gave Garza a 15 percentage point lead over you?
That was before really the runoff got underway. Since then, I have been hustling around the state. We have raised great sums of money to put persuasion and facts into the mail, the texts, the phone calls. I'm not too worried about that poll. I think if they were to take the poll now, they'd have a different number.
So let's talk about some recent headlines. What are your thoughts on the leaked draft majority opinion from the Supreme Court that came out indicating that the justices appeared, at least in that draft, that they are ready to overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, an utter bombshell for society, honestly. We have had this compromise called Roe v. Wade for now 5 decades. And, we can have a philosophical discussion, Jack, any of us can, on when does life start. But government is really not the place to have a philosophical conversation. Government is about solving problems on earth. And so I think that it's a real shame. My reaction is that the compromise has worked for society. I know that there's a lot of dispute, but the point is, when someone has a choice, then if government wants to persuade that choice to be one way or the other, government can do that. But to take away the choice, that's not freedom. And so my reaction to this is we've got to do what we can, whether you're an attorney general candidate or not, to preserve the status quo. And I want to be unequivocal about this. I may be running as a Democrat, but I think this is something that helps Republicans, Democrats, and independents equally. There needs to be a restoration of reproductive choice for Texas women, for young women, for women that are middle-aged, whatever it be. This is the most important issue right now. And I hope all voters, whether they're women or men, take this issue very seriously and get registered and go to the polls and vote. As your Attorney General, I will support reproductive choice.
Well, let me ask you, because as you know, the Texas legislature passed a bill last year. It's now law. It's the so-called trigger law that if in fact Roe v. Wade is overturned by the US Supreme Court, then Texas law would become a ban. There would be a ban on abortions. So what's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's punitive and it's harsh. Now, I understand the trigger law was passed some time ago, but I tend to think about these things legally, but also politically. And I think politically, it's going to damage the GOP. It'll be like they've been chasing this car for a long time. And what happens when they finally catch the car? Well, we're going to find out. But legally, I think it is unequal protection to harshly require women to carry a child to term if they have a medical reason, if they have a social reason, if they have really any reason. And I think that what we need to focus on is preventing unwanted pregnancies. And so I'm concerned that we seem to be going in opposite directions. Public education, contraception, sex education, these are ways that young Texans can be informed on the questions of family planning. And yet the same people who are about to take away reproductive choice also want to forbid discussing sex in school at all. And so that concerns me, and it seems to be working against the common interest.
If you are elected Attorney General and let's say Roe versus Wade is overturned, it goes back to the states, that the trigger law is in effect by the time you are elected. Have you thought about what you would do if you are in that position, you are elected, and what could you do to fight it, if anything?
Well, Jack, I have thought about it. And in fact, I'd encourage your viewers to get on my social media, specifically my Twitter, because the night that Alito's opinion leaked, I knew it was an urgent matter. And so I put out like a 6-point plan of what I can do if I were Attorney General to support reproductive choice. And let me just summarize it by saying, I don't think there's a whole lot of remedy left in the federal court system, since obviously whatever you do in the trial court or the intermediate appellate court is going to wind up in the United States Supreme Court. And so barring, impeachment or natural death, I think we know who our court is for the near future. But this is something where I'm going to fold in voting rights, Jack, because in Texas, if it comes back to the states, well, then let's make Texas a reasonable reproductive choice state. And that, of course, is through voting in a legislature that supports that. But let's just say that the gerrymandering does its thing, and it's really hard to get, an equal number of Democrats and Republicans who will compromise on the issue and lead on the issue. Then I will tell you statewide elections are not gerrymandered. And so specifically, let's get voter access to the top of the menu, and let's elect some reasonable justices to the Texas Supreme Court who will enforce the Texas Constitution. There is an equal protection provision in that. And to specifically answer your question, I will file suit and I will intervene in every Senate Bill 8 prosecution or civil suit so that equal protection is the new way that we protect reproductive choice in Texas court.
Wanted to ask you about Title 42. It's set to end. A federal judge blocked it from ending. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is one of the great crises of our time, which is the performative art coming out of the governor's mansion and the Texas Attorney General's office posing as a political solution on the matter of immigration. Look, do you know how many billions, I would ask the viewers, have already been spent redeploying the Department of Public Safety and the National Guard at very little effect? I would like to see immigration dealt with just as much as the next guy, but let's identify the real culprit. It's not the poor souls looking for a better life. It is the cartel that is taking their life savings, making a profit, and then dumping them on the other side of the Rio Grande River. Here's my solution and my suggestion, and it's very specific. I think there needs to be more prosecutors, and I'm willing, out of my rich Attorney General budget, to put 1% down and hire 8 seasoned prosecutors and partner with the Department of Justice so that we prosecute the cartel. Then we need to do something about this backlog, whether it's Title 42 or whatever other reason, that seems to be amassing at the border for those seeking asylum. Jack, a lot of those are frivolous claims, I'm sure, but you get to assert it nonetheless in America. So let's get some more lawyers down there. And I would suggest let's recruit third-year law students who would be delighted to have the opportunity for some real-life experience. I did that at University of Texas School of Law in the Capital Punishment Clinic. You can get a third-year bar card. I'll be the kind of attorney general, Jack, who will gladly recruit robust, youthful lawyers in law school still to provide that necessary service. And finally, let's get more magistrates on the border. There's underpurposed lawyers in every major city in Texas. They would be delighted to be a temporary magistrate, and then we can do something about this backlog.
But aren't you talking about that's something that is under the federal jurisdiction, unless you're talking about creating a separate state entity similar to what Governor Abbott has done with as far as these misdemeanor prosecutions under Operation Lone Star?
No question about it. Federal law and the Constitution says so, covers immigration, but you can partner with the federal government. Unlike the people who are in leadership now, our authoritarians consider the federal government something to demonize. But the fact is, attorney generals have done this in the past. Special assistant U.S. attorneys are what I was referring to. You can pay out of the attorney general's budget and place them in the Department of Justice. And there you're partnering with the feds. And I think that obviously Congress needs to get their act together. And by being a problem solver rather than an issue spotter and a demonizer, we can probably encourage Congress to do better. But there's nothing that says Texas can't partner with the United States of America.
Would you drop all lawsuits filed against the Biden administration by the state of Texas if you were to be elected?
So let me answer that specifically by saying, I promise I will do a review of every case. I don't have a lot of faith in what Ken Paxton does, his choices that he makes every day, because again, it's performative arts, not politics. Odds are I would, but I promise you this, I will look at each case. Now, I will tell you, I'm going to dismiss every case against the Affordable Care Act by lunch on day one. And a lot of these lawsuits, we'll take them case by case. There may be a technical reason to keep them on file, but I want to be a problem solver, not an arm waver like we have in the office now.
Democrat Joe Jaworski, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack.